Hi guys, my name is Sydney Loudner, and today I'll be talking to you about Croatia. So to start, I would like to talk about how they view their environment, controllable versus non-controllable. So they have a non-controllable outlook towards their environment, basically that they don't think they can control the future and change it. Basically, they encourage efforts and changes to modernize things, especially education, and adapt their traditions to the changes in conditions, whereas some countries would rather keep their traditions the same and not adapt. Something to note about their proxemics: people stand very closely and talk loudly. And I read an article by Mary Gilliland, and it basically talked about how, since they do this, sometimes for like cultures like Americans, we may be overwhelmed by this because we're not as used to talking or standing closely and talking as loudly. And then formality is expected when people don't know each other, and especially for greetings and goodbyes in a business setting. And they'll actually get offended if you did not greet them formally in a situation where they should. For example, in a business meeting, if you were not to greet them formally, they would be very offended. However, if they are familiar with one another, especially Croatians to each other, then informal greetings are very typical, and they'll even kiss each other on the cheeks, which again, for Americans, that's not common. So we might be almost weirded out if they did that to us. Some other things about their proxemics: young people are expected to offer the first greeting to their elders, and same with women to men. So the younger person or the woman is supposed to say hello first. And then there's kind of like with Spanish, there's a formal and an informal version of you. And since the country does follow a pretty formal structure, you're supposed to use the formal you unless you're of the same age, good friends, co-workers, or if, say, your superior invited you to use the informal version, that would be fine. If those circumstances don't apply, then you're expected basically to use the formal version. Okay, and I looked on a travel website, GoWay, to look up some of the best times to travel. I broke it up between coastal Croatia and then inland because they did differ quite a bit. So for the best time to visit the coastal area would be May and June, or September and October. Those are just the basically nicest, not too hot, not too cold times. And then July and August are less crowded just because it's too hot, and that's when a lot of the locals do take their vacations. And then October to March are very quiet just because it's too cold for people to really enjoy the ocean and the attractions, and a lot of the hotels and attractions do actually close. And then December is the rainiest month around this area. As far as inland Croatia, it's not as much for tourists here as the coastal. Basically, the best time is spring, kind of the same. And then August is the rainiest month. And you would want to avoid winter, ideally, if you were traveling there, just because it can be very cold and actually snowy or freezing, so like sleet and things like that even. And it's just too cold for tourists to want to go. As far as gifts, Croatians would prefer smaller gifts. They don't really like expensive gifts just because they feel like they don't need it. They're not extravagant or into the lavish stuff as a lot of Americans would be. And likely if you were to give them an expensive gift, they would split if possible or give away to their family even. Some good gifts examples would be books, a souvenir from a home country. So for example, if an American were to have a business meeting with someone in Croatia, they could bring something that's special to Americans and bring that, and the Croatians would accept that gladly. Or things like jam, honey, alcohol, smaller things like that. And I found from a website on the Cultural Atlas, the article was called Croatian Cultural Etiquette. A superstition that they have is that you're not supposed to give someone an even number of flowers. So if you were to bring them a bouquet, you wouldn't want to have like 2 or 4 flowers. You'd want to have like 3, 5, like that. They just believe that only the deceased are given an even number of flowers. And here are the websites that I mentioned, or my references for them, if you'd like to take a closer look. And I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.